speakers and to all the participants who are present with us today. The topic of today's webinar is on navigating the healthcare during the pandemic, that is do's and don't. The concept behind choosing this topic is that, as we have seen, the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic are far-reaching. It has affect not only one to individual, but to everyone as a whole. The settings has to be arranged separately to prevent from further contamination. And with the shortage of supplies, it has affected the mental as well as the physical health of the majority of the health workers. So before we proceed on with this discussion, I would respectfully request our very own principal, Dr. Unmana Borgohain Saikia, to please give us a welcome address.
Okay, thank you very much, Rekinti. On the very onset, I congratulate you for organizing this webinar on the theme navigating during pandemic. And I welcome our speakers, eminent speakers from different parts of the country and across the country. Ms. Zemi, Ms. Mahima, and Ms. Bleshi. They are going to highlight us in the different topic, and I cordially welcome you to our webinar, and definitely you are going to give us a lot of take-home messages. I also welcome all the participants from different institutions and from our institution too. And particularly, I, on the very beginning, congratulate the entire organizing team for organizing this webinar. This is the most needed now. The topic chosen under this theme, very vital topic chosen. As we know, at present, healthcare situation is such, like we don't know where to go. If we do not have the proper direction, we'll be stuck somewhere. We'll not be able to move forward, or maybe putting a lot of efforts but not able to succeed. So we have to choose which are the area need to be focused more. There are so many areas we have to relook, redesign, re-innovate, but the topic, the three areas, the organization chosen very important topic. Number one topic is, like I can say, perinatal care. The delivery, the birth is a natural process, but so much anxiety comes in this process. And now in this situation, it will be definitely double anxiety, and we have to learn a lot what to do, what not to do. This is very important. There are a lot of do's and there are a lot of don'ts. So this is the area that for the future generation, for the future health of the country, future health of our society, we have to really focus perinatal care. The another area is like innovation in the mental health. Mental health technology innovation. Oh my God. We never thought of like that kind of topic also we have to discuss. We have a lot of technology to help us to do our work faster, to leverage our work. We thought that way. But this is the time now. We are getting so much of pressure. We are social distancing, not going to school, okay, not able to directly communicate with their clients. We are not able to give a smile also. So now, how to connect our mental stability, how to connect our mental vibration with own family members, with the people around, with the patients. So we have to really have to know about the mental health technology. And this is another very important and vital topic for discussion. The third topic is the most sensitive one, is that we all are running of crisis. We are in a crisis, not only India, all over the world, if we only focus in the healthcare professionals. Now, during this pandemic, only the warrior healthcare professionals, they are standing in front. Before this pandemic itself, there was so much of scarcity, so much of less of human resources. But now it's become like, infinite. So not only the human resources, there are so many other resources, there is a crisis. We need PPE kit to wear to go to the patient, but we don't have enough number. We need to have lot of facilities, not only in the hospital. We need to have, if the patient has been quarantined, we need to have some toiletry facilities, like all these things at separate. But particularly in our country like India, by looking at the poverty line, so many people are there, and they are still not having their sanitary latrine. And where they can have the individual one and the separate one when they are having the home quarantine. So this is the picture at the home. For the picture at the hospital, there are so many things, there are so much of crisis that we have to struggle. So this is another topic that area, definitely all these three brilliant, young, energetic speakers are going to throw a light and depth of knowledge, lot of take-home messages for us. And I just wish all the best for this discussion. With this, I'm ending my words. Thank you, Rikinji.
Thank you, ma'am. So moving on, let me just introduce a little bit about the speakers. So before that, I would like to say, I'm Ms. Riginti Nongkunri, the Assistant Lecturer of the OBG department here. As the moderator of today's webinar, respectfully welcome you all once again to visualize and to hear this webinar, which we have selected the topic as navigating healthcare during the pandemic, do's and don'ts. So we're here with our speakers to discuss on the key equipments, on how do we need to navigate the healthcare settings, and how to be mentally prepared to cope up with the situations. So welcome our first speaker of the day, Ms. Jenny Est, a professor of the OBG department, CMC Vellore. She completed her master degree in the year 2009 from CMC itself in the Department of Obstetrics. She's a member of the TNAI, a member of the Nurses League Christian Medical Association of India. She has received many awards, which include during her UG period, she has achieved the first rank in the medical surgical nursing, the Ghana Lazarus Prize and the Shakuntala Prize in the field of MedSurg. Not only that, she bagged first rank in the MHN, that is mental health and midwifery as well. She has received the Pauline King Prize for Best Students in the Research Dissertations. She has presented her research paper in both national and international level. She has published her paper in both the national and international journal as well. She has worked in the field of a staff nurse, a charge nurse, and now she's here as a professor. So we welcome you, ma'am. Next, we have our second speaker of the day, Ms. Blessy Mary Samuel, a trauma and orthopedic nursing staff of the YE Valley NHS Trust, Hereford, United Kingdom. She's an Indian base who is working in the United Kingdom. She completed her master degree in the field of medical surgical nursing from Father Muller College of Nursing, Mangalore. Presented paper in the national level, and she's a special expertise in the field of cardiac and emergency department. She has been working as a staff nurse in the intensive care unit of Father Muller Medical College and Hospitals, and in the medical ward at Honman Parampil. So we welcome you, Ms. Blessy Mary Samuel. We have our next speaker with us, Ms. Mahima Patrick, a lecturer in the Department of Mental Health of the Geetanjali College of Nursing, Udaipur. She completed her master degree from Father Muller College of Nursing, Mangalore. She has worked as a clinical instructor cum nursing educator of the Fortis JK Hospital, Udaipur, published her research paper in the national level. She has attended several training like the BLS by the American Heart Association, training in the National Institute of the Mental Health and Neurosciences. So we welcome you, Ms. Mahima Patrick. So welcome all once again. So moving on with the first discussion of the day. As we have seen, millions of mothers all over the world embark on a journey of parenthood in the world as it was before. They now has to be prepared to bring a life into the world as it has become. So, how do we navigate the settings when it comes to taking care prenatally? So, I request our first speaker to please give your valuable inputs on the topic redesigning prenatal care during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, we welcome you, Ms. Jenny.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
You are. You're audible.
Not audible?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Yes,
Can hear
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
How do I share my slides? Because you've
Yes,
not made
ma'am.
me.
You can share.
Can you make me a host so that I can share my slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I bring greetings to you all from Christian Medical College, College of Nursing, CMC, Vellore. It is indeed an honor and it is a privilege for me to be a part of this e-seminar. And I would like to thank the principal ma'am, the organizing team for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this. Without wasting much of a time, I would like to get into the topic. The topic given to me is redesigning prenatal care during this pandemic, which is called COVID-19. So before that, I would like to introduce what prenatal care is. Prenatal care is nothing but a care received or care given to a pregnant mother through the course of pregnancy. And also it evolves around these three important objectives, that is to provide regular checkups, to treat and prevent potential health problems, and also to promote healthy lifestyle for the mother and the baby. This prenatal care, the term actually is not a very old term. It is just a century old because we all know that when a woman delivers, definitely there is a person who assists her delivery, and that person is called a midwife. Okay, so from the time the human race existed, we all know that the midwifery also existed along with that. So we have midwives from the beginning till I'm not going to great grand history of how it all started, but I'm just going to give a small history about how it all started. So midwife is a person who is with the women during the time of delivery. So we know that only the time of delivery was given so much of importance rather than the pregnancy. So who is this midwife? This midwife is a person who's an experienced person in that community, and she is a person who is actually believed to have a lot of evil powers, magical powers, and it's so a lot of myths around the midwife. The first literature that is recorded about the midwife is in the Bible. Okay, the Bible records that there were Egyptian midwives who took care of the Hebrew women. So that is the first literature which talks about women. So we know it is an ancient history. Midwifery is actually started long ago. But what about this prenatal care? Till the recent, even in 15th and 16th century, we did not have something called prenatal care. I'll just give you a small history, not dating too back, but the beginning of the 19th century, there were a lot of myths, taboos, and cultural beliefs surrounding this prenatal care. After the Crimean War, when Florence Nightingale came, we had a group of nurses who tried to give prenatal care, not comprehensive prenatal care, but it was only instructions and teachings were given to mothers during the later part of her gestation. Even after that, the prenatal care was not organized and most of the deliveries were happening at home. Okay. Then we see in the middle of the 19th century, the surgery, after the invent of anesthesia, we had medicine, surgery, and a lot of other specialty which came up. But even then, obstetric care wasn't even a specialty, not even recognized. But the midwives were taking upper hand in giving prenatal care, and they were giving prenatal counseling, they were conducting deliveries, but the physicians were not involved. Only they were consultant when there was some need or some emergencies. Okay. Now, when 20th century came up, we had a current pattern of prenatal care which emerged, and the present pattern that we are having now is actually it actually evolved in 20th century. So we know that the current pattern that we are having is a traditional method, traditional prenatal care. This traditional prenatal care actually focuses on regular antenatal checkups. Okay, it emphasizes on monthly visits for the women in the first and the second trimester, and after the second trimester, that is from 24 weeks, that is from 28 to 36 weeks, the women to come to the hospital every 2 weeks for her regular checkup, and after 36 weeks, it was a weekly visit. This was having in mind the high income countries. But there was little evidence, research evidence behind the number of visits and the outcome of pregnancy. So the WHO actually recommended a minimum of 4 visits. So that should be a mandate. Every woman during pregnancy has to definitely have 4 antenatal visits. That was a mandate. So we understand that the existing prenatal care system is an 100 years old system, and also the guidelines which was laid for these prenatal care is actually laid by American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, which was put in late 1950s. So we know that we are quite old. So even with a lot of improvements, where the government has introduced a lot of improvements like a cream on a cake, okay, a lot of new health policies come with every change in the government. We have different government putting in different programs for enhancing the maternal and the newborn health, and also the lot of new education systems have come to the workers, healthcare workers at the grassroots level, village healthcare nurses, the lot of training for the DAS, a lot of education at the primary, secondary levels, and also healthcare services have been reorganized very well in the primary, secondary, and the tertiary care setup. And also many initiatives come up, and community interventions also have been involved. With all of these improvements, even after all of these improvements being attached to the traditional care, prenatal care concept, we still have a lot of gaps. And it says that the traditional method it is not appropriate to meet the national health objectives, and also it doesn't meet the diverse needs of the diverse population of pregnant women. Okay, so there are a lot of national health objectives that has been put forward by the government. We know that the Millennium Goal Development Goals, but we are not able to achieve it because there are a lot of gaps in our traditional prenatal care which we are delivering. So we are under a great pressure already to have a change. And with all this great pressure behind or at the background, okay, we are actually at a verge where it is high time for us to change. When we were at this point, we had this uninvited guest, most unexpected guest, we should say, that is the COVID-19 pandemic, which is shaking the entire world, biting the entire world with its bitter fangs. So we know that this COVID-19 is a big challenge and a big pandemic now. Okay. Now, I'll just give a general information that we all know about this COVID-19. This COVID-19, we all know it is a respiratory droplet infection, which is highly contagious. And we all know that we have to wear mask, follow proper hand hygiene, and also keep social distancing. This doesn't change for a general population or a pregnant. Whether you are a pregnant woman or a general other public, you have to follow these things. So it doesn't change. But what is new in pregnancy? Is there anything that is new during pregnancy? Is there any relationship between which is very different from the other general population? So we'll see some facts between this COVID-19 and pregnancy. Okay. Pregnancy is not considered as a high risk population to contract this infection. It is actually a good news for us. And we all assume that pregnancy is a condition where our immune system decreases and we are prone to develop infection. Suppose if we get infection during this time, that is pregnancy, we might end up having severe infection. That is our assumption. But so far, the researchers doesn't say that we are more likely to the pregnant women are more likely to contract the infection. Okay. Then the next one is there is no evidence saying that there is early pregnancy loss with COVID infection, and also there is no evidence telling about teratogenicity, or we have not found any congenital anomalies or chromosomal defects because of this COVID. But we cannot understand it completely because it is a novel virus, and also we know that we need long-term data to come to a conclusion about this teratogenicity and early pregnancy loss. So for now, COVID-19 is not an indication for medical termination of pregnancy. Suppose if a mother who's pregnant acquires COVID-19 infection, she gets a mild flu, an upper respiratory infection, or she develops mild pneumonia, we have to keep in mind that she will definitely have good prognosis. If it becomes a severe respiratory infection, severe pneumonia, then the mortality might come near. Okay. Now, pregnancy with heart disease is definitely a high risk for the mother if she acquires COVID-19. Definitely, this pandemic upsets the psychological state of the mother, increasing depression and anxiety. So this is one of the important field that we have to touch when we are giving care for a prenatal mother. Okay. Now about the transmission of COVID. Vertical transmission, that is transmission from the mother to the fetus through the placenta, is possible. There is a recent article in Hindu, the national journal, which says that they isolated this virus from the placenta and they isolated this from the cord, the fetal cord, and also it was seen in cervical secretions. So we have an evidence that this this transmission, vertical transmission, is possible with COVID-19 virus. But the good news is the breast milk is not shown positive for the virus. So breast milk can be given for the newborn when the baby is born. So we don't have any research or any records showing that the breast milk has this virus. With all this in mind, so we know about this COVID, we know about the traditional prenatal care. Already we are under a pressure for a great change because it was not meeting the diverse needs of the population, and also we were not able to achieve the national health goals and all. So with all these in mind, we know that we are facing this pandemic. It is a great challenge indeed, but it is also an invitation for us to redesign the maternal infrastructure. Okay. We cannot be redesigning every areas because certain areas which is not at all appropriate has to be completely taken off and we have to rebuild it completely. So when we are trying to make changes or when we are trying to redesign and rebuild, we have to remember that these changes might remain permanent also even after the pandemic fades away. With a lot of research is being done on this COVID, we understand that every day, every week, there are new researches, new inferences that we are getting from the lot of researches which is being done. So we have to keep all these things in our mind when we are trying to redesign the prenatal care setup or health infrastructure. Okay. Now, I'm going to put in 3 important recommendations under redesigning, which is being put by most of the hospitals across the country and across the globe. What are the 3 important recommendations? The first one is we have to limit the clinical visits. The second important thing is encourage virtual visits. The third important one is provide support to the pregnant women. So when we come to say that the women should not come for regular antenatal checkup, or we have to limit the clinical visits, we have to consider in mind, we have to call these mothers during particular gestational age where we can club all these care together around that particular gestational age. For example, limit antenatal visits around, you can call the mother by 12 weeks, 20 weeks, 28 weeks, and 36 weeks. This is, I'm talking about an on-site visit. that is in-person visit. Okay, so when you call a mother at 12 weeks, you can do, or 12 weeks or before that, you can do a dating scan, baseline blood investigations to rule out bloodborne viruses, hemoglobin status, and you can do morphology, you can do down screening test. All these things can be combined together at 12 weeks. When you call the woman at 20 weeks, this is a time where you can do an ultrasound scan to do morphology. This is otherwise called a morphology scan. By 28 weeks, you're worried about doing a diabetes GDM screening, and also you have to immunize the mother. By 36 weeks, you will be considered to do a growth scan, check the presentation, and also check her BP. So these are the 4 important times a mother has to definitely come to the hospital and have a consultation with the doctor face to face. So this minimal visit have to be told to the mother. You needn't call the mother very often. Suppose a woman during the time of her face-to-face visit, she has got some symptoms like influenza-like illness, then you can defer until 7 days. Or if she develops severe symptoms, respiratory symptoms looking like COVID, then you ask the mother to come to the healthcare definitely for her management, but by informing the ambulance prior about her condition, or she can take her own vehicle and come. If the woman is advised to have self-quarantine, then you can defer an appointment after 2 weeks. So that is acceptable. Low-risk mother should never be worried about having a home monitoring. Okay, you have to, as a healthcare personnel, we have to reassure the mother to have home monitoring if there are no other risk factors for the mother. This is about limiting antenatal visits. So these are the important gestational ages where you can call the mother for a face-to-face visit. The second one is encourage virtual visit. Is it that easy? Especially in a developing country like us? No, it is not easy to get the compliance of the patient. Not only that, there are a lot of barriers involved. If we have to encourage virtual visits, we have to have multidisciplinary team approach. We have to have people from maternal and fetal medicine. We have to have people from midwifery, telemedicine, virtual care, and the administration of the hospital should be involved in taking a virtual telecommunication, or having a virtual consultation with a physician. There are a lot of barriers here. If you see, there'll be a lot of financial barriers, educational barriers, because our country is a country where we have very low literacy rate, and also personal barriers, technological barriers, and cultural. These are some barriers where we find the mother will not be compliant to come for a virtual visit very often. The third one is support the mother, antenatal mother. If you are encouraging home monitoring, we have to support the mother by asking them to use home Doppler devices, glucometers, and home BP apparatus. And also you can advise the mother to have connection with a lactation support group or an antenatal education group, or you can provide these gadgets, whatever medical aid they want, you can provide this. So it has to be made accessible for the women to use all these things. So provision of support is very, very important when we are trying to redesign, think about redesigning the prenatal care. Okay, now I would like to tell about a study which was done in US. This is a study done in a hospital. They had redesigned the traditional antenatal care with 4 in-person visits, 1 ultrasound visit, and 2 virtual visits. This inferred that the providers were free, and also the system capacity was less. When the healthcare system capacity was less, they were able to concentrate giving care for patients who needed care more, that is patients with morbidity, high morbidity, rather than seeing patients with low risk. And there are some group of people who were disadvantaged for this telemedicine. Those are people coming from rural background, no internet connection, and low socioeconomic status. But there were one group of people who also had advantage, that is women working in various sectors, and also women who need to travel very far to see a doctor for consultation, or women having childcare needs. And this research also concluded saying that some risk assessment was missed because these low socioeconomic people who were not able to access the doctors through virtual visit developed morbidity. So that was missed. And also they were asking for some change in the time of visit, which can be extended to the evening times and in the late hours of the day.
And healthcare should be holistic. Actually, the study inferred that a comprehensive multidisciplinary caregivers should be available to give a virtual consultation. So, not concentrating only on the mother's condition, not concentrating only on the baby's condition. So, a comprehensive multidisciplinary caregivers are needed, and also it demanded that hospital-based care can be shifted to community-based, and even more to the area where the women are living, that is to the outreach area to the pregnant women. So this is one study which was recently done in the US. I just want to brush up on some specific guidelines which was changed during the pregnancy. When a woman comes during pregnancy to the hospital or to the OPD or an inpatient services, it is mandate for us to ask about the history. The history should be on any travel history, any contact with other COVID positive patients, any symptoms that they have, influenza-like symptoms. Definitely these histories should be asked. If they come into the hospital, then please share information on the COVID-19 infection. Some might not be aware of the gravity of the COVID-19 or the gravity of the infection. So tell them about minimal antenatal visits also. If a woman comes with ILI, definitely you have to test the women for COVID-19. And that should not be a reason for delaying obstetric management. Obstetric management has to be prompt, and because of the testing of COVID-19, presence of ILI should not interfere with the obstetric management. So we can reduce routine procedures like elective inductions and repeated growth scans, monitoring growth scan can be reduced. So once a woman comes and goes with a suspected COVID-19, definitely we have to decontaminate the equipment, especially the ultrasound equipment, once you do a morphology scan. This is an algorithm or a flow chart which tells you if a woman during pregnancy comes with an ILI, you take a test for COVID-19. If she is otherwise asymptomatic, that is, she is not developing any lower respiratory infection, and she is supposed to be positive, you isolate the mother for 14 days and discharge. If she shows negative results, you can monitor her at home and see whether she is developing new infection. Women with symptoms, we have to give symptomatic treatment, monitor the mother and the fetal status continuously. Women with severe infection or severe symptoms will definitely need admission in ICUs. If a woman develops multi-system failure because of COVID, we can plan for a medical termination of pregnancy if it is less than 24 weeks, or an induction of labor if it is more than 24 weeks of gestation. Just to highlight on some intrapartum care. If a mother with COVID positive comes in labor, admit her in isolation rooms, assess the maternal and the fetal status, assess for signs of COVID, symptoms for COVID, and also monitor saturation. Always maintain saturation more than 94%. Do not be satisfied by only looking at the saturation. Sometimes the mother respiratory rate might go up, and that will be an indication to say that she is getting into respiratory compromise. Discourage use of inhalation analgesia intrapartum, because this is Entonox is one inhalation analgesia which can be used, which can generate aerosols, and that will cause transmission of the COVID. And also the mode of delivery is not usually influenced by the COVID-19, presence of COVID-19 or not. You can encourage instrumental delivery if a woman has respiratory symptoms, because it will cut short the second stage of labor, and also women, the maternal exhaustion will be taken care. She might not go into maternal exhaustion. We have to be very cautious in IV fluid administration to prevent respiratory failure or fluid overload, and also continue monitoring the women. Just to highlight on the postnatal care, the new risk for newborn is not known, but we are worried about the droplet transmission. It should not get transmitted to the baby through our droplet. It should not be transmitted from the mother to the baby. So consider separation of the newborn from the mother. But this decision has to be taken case by case. If the mother is not willing, you can think of rooming in. Rooming in is having the mother and the baby in the same room. When you're planning for a rooming in, you have to take adequate precautions.
If possible, do have a physical barrier
তো
between
রজনী খাবার আসুন তোর সব গা ভাল হয়ে যাব আর বাইরে থেকে বড় থাকো এরা
make sure that the mother is
সব কি ভাত মানুহ খাই নাই নাকি
following hand
মানে তো একো নাহকে থাকে
okay
ঠিক আছে বেশি কেছত মরব
breast milk does not show virus. So far, the researchers have not showed us anything that the breast milk has virus in it. So we can express breast milk from the mother and can give it to the baby if you are planning to separate the mother and the baby. So you can ask the mother to use a dedicated breast pump, express the milk, and then give it to the baby. So these are about the patient care changes that we have seen. Now about the discharge. After the patient becomes all right, we can discharge the patient. But it is based on three important things. The discharge is purely based on the hospital policy. You can discharge the patient on test-based discharge or symptom-based discharge or time-based discharge. You can test a patient if a patient is positive after 7 days, you can again do a repeated test. If it is negative, you can discharge. Symptom based, once the symptoms resolve, quarantine her or isolate her for 14 days and then you can discharge. If it is a time based discharge, 14 days of isolation and then discharge. So it is all based on the hospital that the patient is admitted. Then some guidelines for the care providers. The care providers are supposed to follow the national, state and the local policy on testing patients, and they have to inform the infection control committee about the COVID positive status of the patient. They have to have a registry, and the healthcare provider should plan to decrease the number of staffs in the working area. They have to plan vigilantly how to handle the shortage of PPEs, and also they have to maximize the use of telehealth rather than personal visits. And consider staffing. The staffing can be reduced and then they can be shift staff. Every weekly you can change the rotation for the staff. Appropriate spacing should be maintained in the hospital area, and also this helps in preventing transmission. And because of the minimum staffing, the obstetric care should not be compromised. You have to provide safe obstetric care even with minimum staffing. So there should be a skill mix in planning the staffing. Then encourage a single birth partner, and the birth partner should also wear appropriate PPEs. The staff who's taking care of the patient also has to use appropriate PPEs. Then there is one model that I'm going to tell now, that is called as the teams. The staff who are taking care of the patients can be divided into teams. That is, the outpatient team can take care of patients, see the patients in the outpatient department. They needn't come to the inpatient area and follow up the patient after admission. There can be a separate team for taking care of patients in the hospital. In our hospital, we have a separate team even inside the theater to take care of to take elective seizures and emergency seizures. So the theater team will not come to the labor room. So you can have teams so that the transmission is reduced. However, with all these change in the models, with the change in the policies, prenatal care, the approach for the routine birth is not going to be disturbed. The COVID-19 does not change the obstetric management of patients. Now, the question is, with all these background, is healthcare a right or is healthcare a luxury? This is a question. We know that there are a lot of gaps between the healthcare providers and the recipients, that is patient. Is it a right or is it a luxury? For a lot of people, it is a luxury. For few people, it is a privilege because they can afford it. But I would like to say that I believe that healthcare should not be a right. Should be it is a right, it is not a privilege. So I would like to close with a quote saying that we have a big challenge in front of us, that is we have to provide effective, efficient and equitable patient care, which also should be flexible and patient centered. So are we delivering it is a question, and we in our future we have to see that it has to be delivered. So there is a big gap between that. We'll join hands together to bridge the gap. And I would like to conclude this by thanking the organizers, by thanking the principal for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was indeed very informative. So with one 116 million expected birth in the approximately 9 months since the COVID-19 pandemic was recognized, there's a need to take into consideration because a mother's health is a way for the future of one living being. So I request the participants, if you have any question, to put forward in the chat box, which will be put up at the end of the sessions. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again. So since the WHO has designated this coronavirus disease as the global pandemic, many settings are not that welcoming to face the situations with lack of what we call the key equipments, which indeed is needed to be systematized in caring for the patients. So we have our next speakers, Ms. Blessy Mary Samble, who will be sharing with us about her views regarding the topic on navigating the healthcare supply shortage during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rikendi. First of all, a warm good afternoon to all. And I will thank principal, vice principal, management, and all the faculties to give me an opportunity to present sessions during this webinar. And also I will thank you all the students and participants for your patience and attention. Previous speaker, she has already mentioned regarding what is coronavirus. So just I am just dealing my topic. First, we will see that my topic is navigating healthcare supply shortage during the pandemic of COVID-19. We will see one by one. So we will go through each keyword. So here I'm using 3 keywords. First of all, we will see what is health. Just we know that the definition of health, but I am just going through brushing up what is the keywords of these factors. Especially I'm going through health, pandemic, and navigations. What is the definition of health according to WHO? WHO says that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. If the health is maintained well, it helps to maintain other factors such as economic factors, social factors, and the list goes on. And we know that if the health is good, the society will be maintained good. If the society is good, the whole nations will be benefit from the particular person. Next, we will see what is pandemic. We know that the pandemic, the word itself says that it's a disease condition which is prevalent over a whole country or the world. I can say that we are in the pandemic situations and our aim is to achieve a whole health towards each individuals. How we have to maintain this health? So before aiming to the particular goal, we have to find which way or which is the path we have to follow. This path is called navigations. The definition says that the process or activity of accurately ascertaining one's position and planning and following a route. So here it clearly states that it's a clear path to identify how we have to go through and achieve the health. According to my topic, now I am going to discuss how we are maintaining in UK. I am working as a staff nurse, registered nurse in orthopedic ward, and we have come across many patients like COVID positive. Initially, I was working as a staff nurse in daycare unit, but due to these pandemic situations, they have stopped all the elective surgical cases and they have redeployed us to many COVID wards. So we have just come across different scenarios. Now I am going to discuss each topic. So first we will see proper PPE, bed availability, proper swabbing facility, ambulance services, accurate number of staffs, especially the redeployment, antibody testing, separate lift facility, availability of hand gel, separate entrance for staff and patients, proper continuous educations, mass fit testing, correct usage of signboards, medicine distributions, proper disinfections and waste segregations, bath after the duty. You may feel funny for that, but it was our reality. And uniform management, isolation rooms, and correct hydrations and nutritions. We will go through each one of that. First one, we will see what is the parameters. So first one, we will focus on the PPE, personal protective equipments. We got adequate number of personal protective equipments, but some point we got some lack of mask. So we got PPEs like gown, gloves, and mask. I have already mentioned that we were having some amount of scarcity for the mask. During that particular situations, our management has decided to do a mask fit testing. What is the meaning of mask fit testing? It shows that the proper shape and the position of the mask, which help to support or just protect the person who is providing the healthcare services. During these situations, they will take us, or each employee will be taken to the test, and the employee will be just giving one kind of mask. Like different kinds of masks we were having, especially 8050V.
Bleshi,
And
will you put on slides so?
yeah, is that okay, ma'am?
No, you could have put on the slides so.
Yeah, I have already.
Okay.
Can you
It's
see
fine
that?
now. It's okay, fine.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So we got mask fit testing. So it will help to identify whether the mask is fit for the persons, especially the shape and size of the mask. And it will help to protect from the coronavirus. We got different kinds of masks like 8050V mask, 1873 mask, and 8863. The list goes on. So according to the priority, how it's convenient to the persons and how it's going to protect, according to that, they will give the test priority. If the person is failing in the mask fit testing, they will use another mask for the redivisions. Other PPEs are like goggles, face shielding, hair cap, proper hand gel as required. Next, we will see what about the bed availability. The shortage of the beds can cause some other negative impact to the healthcare systems. During our pandemic situations, we were having a lack of beds facility. We never expect this is going to happen to us. But wisely, our management has taken a decisions to close certain areas like day case unit, endoscopic unit, eye clinic unit, and elective cases units. During the situations, we have selected, as I said you earlier, they have stopped all the elective surgeries so that the day case will be closed for temporary basis. And they have started day case unit as a dirty ITU. The ITU itself, they have divided into two categories. First one is clean ITU, other one is dirty ITU. Clean ITU in the sense they are keeping only the clean patients without corona infections, those who are admitted, and if they need high priority care, they are admitting to the clean ITU. But in case of dirty ITU, we are admitting the corona positive patients who require high amount of medical attention. And during these situations, they have provided the dirty ITU with adequate number of ventilators, oxygen supplies, proper number of beds, and central monitoring system. And also they have provided for the agency nurses, normal nursing staffs. I have already mentioned that certain areas they have closed, especially the day case unit, endoscopic unit, eye clinic, theaters. So those staffs they have promoted as a corona ward staff nurses. And also they have restricted visitors and relatives during the hospitalizations. These are the ways we try to overcome our bed shortage. Next, we will see what about the swabbing and antibody testing facilities. If the person or the staff, they are showing the symptoms of COVID-19, especially increased temperature, or sore throat, severe headache, and respiratory distress, they can inform to the A&E, Accident and Emergency Unit. They will connect these particular patients to the swab hubbing team. So what they are doing, swab hubbing team, they will find out the location of the particular person and they will go to the person's house and they will do the swabbing of nose as well as the throat. And the results will be out within 24 to 48 hours. And if the patient's symptoms are worsening, they can directly come to A&E. And one more facility we got, antibody testing. If the patients wants to know whether they have infected with coronavirus, they can do antibody testing as well. And next facility we got, ambulance facility. We have to appreciate the hard work of the ambulance team. If the patients are not able to come themselves to the hospitals, what they can do that they can inform to A&E. The A&E people, they will connect to the ambulance team. Ambulance team will identify the location of the patients and they will bring the patients to the hospital. During the transportation, if they need any emergency, medical emergencies, the medical teams will be present during the transportations and they will provide the care to the patients if required. I have already mentioned regarding the adequate staffing. During these pandemic situations, almost all the staffs, they were having mental stress. And some of them, they already affected with coronavirus due to the exposure. So during this particular situations, we have closed day case unit, endoscopic unit, and also eye clinic units. So these staffs, they were with willingly, they have just attended the continuous nursing education classes. So in those particular classes, what they are doing, they are giving more importance how we have to overcome this pandemic situation, how we have to do the proper management, how we have to treat from the nursing aspects. All the training they were doing to the patient staffs, and they were just exposing those staffs to the particular area. In that situations, before the redeployment, if the staffs are not confident, they will provide 2 weeks of supernumerary period. During this supernumerary period, they can learn under the supervision of a team or a senior staffs. These are about the staffing, adequate staffing, because initially we were having some number of shortage in staffing, but through these methods, we try to overcome all those problems. Next, we will see that proper lift facility and entrance facility. Proper lift facility. As we know that due to these pandemic situations, I am not asking to build a new lift or anything, nothing like that. Here, we got at least 2 lifts each areas. What we have done here, we have created green lift as well as a red lift. Green lift only for the patients who are not affected with corona. The red lift only for the corona patients. So what we are doing that if we are transferring the corona patients, we will provide adequate announcements to clear out the way. So we will make sure that there is no persons during the transportation. So we are just shifting the patients from one department to another departments like X-ray or CT scan or just MRI. So after each shifting or after this transfer, the lift will be decontaminated. That's mandatory to us. And regarding the separate entrance, we got main entrance. But due to this pandemic situations, what our hospital has done, they have just taken main entrance only for the patients. And there they have provided certain number of signboards. So it will help to identify if the person is illiterate, they can identify. They look at the signboards and they can identify that, okay, these are the factors which can influence us. And these are the parameters we have to just follow in order to avoid the transmission of coronavirus. I have already mentioned regarding the proper signboards. We have to focus on these areas because these are the factors which really can influence the transmission of disease conditions. If you are maintaining proper signboards, example, no entry boards, if the patients are more affected, if the corona patients are admitted to a corona wards, we will keep some signboards. So it shows that, okay, these are the areas. So we have to just avoid those areas as able as we can. And also other signboards like donning and doffing boards, waste segregation boards, and each room, we got side rooms. So initially, if the patient's swab has taken and we don't know whether the patient is affected with corona, COVID positive or negative. So in that particular situations, we are keeping a signboards That signboards clearly states that how we have to provide some self precautions before entering to the room and after coming out from the rooms. Next one, regarding the proper medicine dispensing and equipment. We know that the vaccines they have not found yet, but still some symptomatic managements our hospital is doing. So they were trying to find out how we have to overcome the shortage of the medicines. And regarding the equipments, we got adequate number of the equipments, and we try to overcome all the negative impacts which can be developed from the coronavirus. And regarding the proper disinfections and waste segregations, it's very important we have to focus these areas. If there is any lagging, there's a chance of high transmission of COVID positive, or else I can say that there will be a chance of second wave. So proper disinfections usually we are doing with the help of Trisol. That's a solutions we are usually using for proper disinfections. And regarding the waste segregations, if the patient is affected with COVID positive, we are usually using two kinds of bags. First one is red bag, which will be soluble at 30 degrees Celsius. And first we have to keep all the linens, dirty linens to the red bag, and we have to just tie closely, and we can put into the white bag. So this process or this procedure needs to be done at the bedside. We are not supposed to take out the linen from the affected COVID patient's side. It shows that it will help to prevent the amount of transmissions. And we will just see that self-cleaning and uniform management. What does it mean? During our pandemic situations, it was necessary to do a bath in the hospital itself. We are not supposed to go out of the hospital without taking bath, because and some of the studies shows that the number of transmissions or the number of exposure can be minimized with the help of bathing. And usually the hospital is providing gowns to the staffs, those who are working in the COVID-19 or corona wards. If there is any lack of gowns, we can use our uniform. But only thing, if we are taking our uniforms to our home, we have to cover this uniform with this fully covered materials, like almost like a pillowcase. And we can put directly this pillowcase and uniform into the washing machines, and we can do cleaning at least with 30 degrees Celsius. And it will make sure that the disease transmission will be minimal. And certain studies there, it shows that the community hospital, they were having a lack of face mask. Especially the study was done in St. Paul, Maine. Next study shows that in the US hospitals, they were having a lack of scarcity for equipments and personal protective factors, especially equipments and the face mask. Other study shows that it's a teamwork. We have to do a proper chain reactions. If one chain is stronger, the another chain can be connected. So it will help to identify the negative or lack of the problems, and we can overcome the situations. So the chain will be consisted of really the production of the raw materials, manufacturing factors, transportation system, and distribution network. If all the chains are well connected, I can say that we can overcome these disease conditions. And here I am going to conclude my topic. With all these parameters, initially the rates were high, but today the present rate is at the 0 level. That was mainly because of the God has done a great help for us, and also we are going to thank UK NHS, and also I am really thankful to each one of the audience and participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Blessy, for the informative preview that you have endured to us, with deadlines which have to be followed so that we can catch up to the best service in healing those who need much care. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Virginia.
So we'll move on with the next speaker. So the current COVID-19 pandemic not only create havoc, which the other speakers have already mentioned, it has create havoc not only just one, two individuals, but it's a disaster. It affect mentally. So, but if we are not acting now, then we might have to face for the darkness ahead, which can lead to depression and anxiety. So to discuss on the most important topic, the need for a mental health technology revolution in the COVID-19 pandemic, I request Ms. Mahima Patrick to please forward the discussions.
Okay, thank you, Rikanti. Hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
And how do I share my slides? Okay, yeah.
Ms. Blasi, can you just disable your slide share so that the other speaker can share a slide?
Is my slide visible to everyone?
Yes.
Could you please help me to share the slide because I'm facing some problem in sharing?
Sikha Mani, are you here to share the slide?
Yes, ma'am. I'll share.
Please share.
Okay, thank you so much. So very good evening to all. Welcome to this online platform. Welcome to this online platform to all the leaders, participants and viewers. It's good to see all of you attending this very webinar and spending time for learning something for yourself. And being a healthcare worker, you all being a healthcare worker, you all can navigate people and community about keeping good mental health during this pandemic situation. Hats off to everyone that you choose, that you have chosen this this platform to spend time. So the webinar topic is really good and interesting. That is navigating healthcare during the pandemic, do's and don'ts. So we all should know about the do's and don'ts. So can I have a next slide? So the topic which is given to me for a discussion is the need for a mental health technology revolution in coronavirus 19 pandemic. So welcome to this present technology revolution that we all are attending right now, that is this webinar. What a great idea, isn't it? To impart a knowledge and to create awareness during this pandemic. So let me ask you, this technology was known to all of us, isn't it? This is nothing new. Like, let me remind you, or let me remind all of you, just because of this pandemic, we all are getting used to it. We are, this online platform is really great. We all that is happening in this 2020. Isn't this amazing 2020 year? Apart from having a look on a positive side, even though it is a small, but then this is really good. So let's discuss upon the topic which is given to me. Next slide, please. That is, so here we will discuss about mental health that is a need of the hour. So our society and even we are aware about mental health, but sometimes, majority of the times, we fail to acknowledge it. Even we being a part of healthcare professionals, we hesitate to share, to speak. Sometimes we choose to keep quiet, suppress our emotions, feelings, and think that this is it, this is life, and it has to go on. Yeah, that is true. It has to go on. Life has to go on. We should move on, but not in a maladaptive manner. The mental health illness, it has gained control now. It is much more worse and dangerous than the pandemic declared worldwide. Now, people are realizing how important their mental health is, and they are finding all possible ways to be mentally healthy. They are searching on the Google and every possible way, wherever the help can come from, they all are seeking that mental health, especially. Recently, the Indian Psychiatric Society, they have conducted a survey and has acknowledged that there is a sudden inclination in the mental health issues, like all the psychiatric emergencies, be it major or be it minor, but they are into an inclination. And the possible reason behind this is the restriction which is imposed worldwide to everyone. Not even a single individual is spared. That is social isolation, maintain distancing, not going out from our home, like for almost more than a month or two, we were inside our house during that lockdown period. So it's high time for all of us to keep a and not forgetting being healthy. So let's discuss some technological revolution that are already existed, but they are into trend now. So the first technological revolution in mental health or seeking mental health is in the next slide. So you can say technological revolution, or to be more concise or to be more clearer, we should say digital mental health revolution. With the picture on the slide, you can know that you have to take care of your health with the help of phone. So we argue that what we need during a public health crisis, during this public health crisis, what actually we need related to mental health. So we need a digital mental health revolution that has to be scaling up the delivery of confidential mental health. So seek a person who wants to seek a mental health, they are not very outspoken, or they don't want to discuss into a public. It has to be a confidential matter. So how we can use the technology revolution or digitalization in seeking mental health. So it has to be very confidential mental health services to the patient across the wide range of platforms, right from the tele-mental health to the mobile interventions. The telehealth, you must have heard, you all must be knowing about it, but there is a new concept, tele-mental health, to a mobile intervention such as application and text messaging. So here we will discuss an overview of technological tools, which all are the technological tools nowadays that can be used to seek a mental health during this pandemic. So we will discuss upon that. The first one is telehealth. That is in the next slide. So the slide which you are able to see, this is a screenshot of one of the hospital, well-known hospital and JCI accredited, NABH accredited hospital. It is a screenshot of the site of that hospital, that they are providing telehealth services, including tele-mental health services. They are providing counseling sessions through the help of this technology. So there is a crucial role for the use of teleconferencing software for the therapy sessions during this pandemic. So few countries, including India also, And they have provided online psychological counseling and self-help, which was widely rolled out by the mental health professionals. They are in a process, or they are conducting many counseling sessions for people with the help of this teleconferencing, and it is a successful one. Not only in hospitals, this trend is now taken up by the medical institution, universities, and academic societies. Now they all are into developing online counseling session for the people. On the other hand, to this technology, of course, technology is, when we are talking about technology, there are disadvantages also. So to this technology, the disadvantage is because of lack of internet services or the availability of Wi-Fi, because there is a limited data plan. So what we can do in that case? So there are ways to encounter this problem, that we can come up by telecoms, all the companies, they can come up with a free internet services. However, long-term strategies are still needed to be developed further, widening the digital divide, including providing affordable high-speed internet access, improving usability of telehealth program, awareness. So these all can be overcome with the help of many other solutions. So this is one of the technological revolution, that is telehealth, that includes tele-mental health also. The next one will talk about mental health smartphone applications. So you can see on this slide, there are a list of applications. This is actually an application in your smartphone. You can download it through Play Store, and on the right hand side, you can see the logo of that particular application. So importantly, the use of personal mobile phones nowadays in present, they are into a larger percentages. Okay, so some people, they have smartphones. Not everyone, but majority of the people, they have smartphones now. So mental health applications are something new that have shown effectiveness in decreasing symptoms of depression and anxiety. It is taken from one of the study. Because of COVID-19, multiple meditation and wellness applications are being designed by the private sector. Many of you must have downloaded also. When you surf through social media like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, many of the advertisements are there that so and so meditation or wellness applications are there. Even the small clinics, they have their own applications. You can download it and you can take advantage of many of the options in that applications. So the private sector, they are into the process of developing all these applications, and it is free available. And now they have temporarily opened these applications for a free membership to aid in the ease of anxiety, and the majority of these are being mindfulness applications. So one of the application I went through was like a meditation app only. I've just downloaded it. So there are meditation musics, they guide you. If you can plug in your earphones and you can give time for that, so it will give you a very good experience. Right? You're sitting at your home and you can experience a good relaxation technique. So having these applications to get help is a good initiative, but awareness about these all is also important. So when a person is aware about such technology, you need to make others also aware. So the next technology revolution upcoming, in the next slide, you can see I have shared a suicide prevention app. So this app, it says the name of this app is Not Okay is a free app. Okay, so this app features a large red button that can be activated to let close friends, family, and their support group. So when they hit the digital panic button, a message along with their current GPS location is sent to their contact. The message reads, "Hey, I'm not okay. Please call, text, or come and find me." So these type of messages or the application messages are being circulated or invented or into a more fashion nowadays, so that people can seek help. In India, this is not into much fashion or not into much trend, but since this pandemic time, we really need to get aware ourselves and to make others also aware regarding all these applications. So the next one, next technology we can discuss is texting applications. Next slide, please. So the next slide, which is visible to you all, this is my favorite from all other technological revolution. This is my favorite. So what happened is recently a message popped up in my inbox, and I usually don't open inbox messages as it's always about some commercial advertisement or auto-generated messages. But since our known people, they do not do inbox message. They all obviously they have other social media like WhatsApp and Instagram. So we communicate with that. Now this inbox message is not into that fashion, so I do not open it. But this message I happened to open, and I was reading it. So I was very happy that this message, it said to me, I'll read it for you all as you can, but then also I want to read it for you all. So it says, as your trusted health partner, Max Bupa is with you amidst the current coronavirus outbreak. We would like to inform you that all our hospitalization policies will cover hospital expenses arising out of treatment for COVID-19. Okay, so this was the message I read. So the stress, tension, anxiety that what if I get infected? What if my family members get infected? What will I do? How will I deal? What about the finance? And many more things. All the worries were gone, and I was relieved for a while after reading this text message, auto-generated message, which I got from a insurance company. Now look at this auto-generated text, which was sent to many others are there. So anxiety, worries, stress, everything was gone. Everything was gone. So similarly, if you notice, now slowly everything is coming back to normal. All the big brands are advertising about hygiene and safety measures they are taking. They are taking even online ordering food. If you order a food right during this pandemic time, now this unlocking is going on. So you can see they are into that messaging or the advertisement area that we are having a good hygienic, we are having a zero contact delivery, they are sanitizing their hands while delivering, they are wearing gloves. It is everywhere. Now they are making people realize with the help of text messages and the advertisement. People will be like, oh, they are following all these precautions, so it's safe to go buy, purchase, eat and everything. Okay, so we all are trusting them, and our stress is reduced, anxiety is reduced. We all are traveling in cabs, eating from outside, staying in the hotels and whatnot. So a simple text has impact nowadays. So next is next revolution, technological revolution, is social media. What more I can say about this? Everyone is aware and everyone is so active in the social media, and I should say during this lockdown everyone is overactive. Positive and supportive connections during a time of physical isolation. Isolation, an individual cannot go and sit and hold the hands and talk and give that comfortable touch to the patient. Now they are all alone with their phones only or with the gadgets. So social media plays an important role. So earlier work shows that many people with mental illness are increasingly turning to social media to share their experiences, and they are seeking mental health information and advice. That I think not even a single person in this webinar have not gone through. No, previous slide please. Till now they have not served about the symptoms of coronavirus, how to protect ourselves and what are the latest updates. So none of us is spared from this, having this information searched on the Google or on the social media. On the other hand, it also served to increase depression and anxiety symptoms based on the negative social comparison and the spreading of distressing information. So this social media, it plays a really important role in giving positive news also and negative news also. Sometimes it circulates fake news, and that is so fast that we believe, and people panic because of the fake news. So we need to take charge on it, and we need to see that what reliable information we can get from the social media, and where the fake news are there, and we should not get panicked. So in the next slide, I got this email, a girl signing a petition using a social media through email. She is signing a petition that she was a coronavirus survivor and she survived. So now she has signed a petition, and she's sending a mail to everyone to sign the same petition for removing the stigma. So this is a platform she has chosen, or a social media platform she has chosen, to raise her voice, to share the feeling, to reduce the anxiety. What will happen with this signing the petition? At least her stress will reduce. She'll have that confidence that people are there. Those who are signing the petition, she can think that, oh, people are there, people are listening to me. So all these things are happening. Actually, these technological revolution are at its higher level nowadays. So the next slide, where I want to discuss about some do's pandemic. To your family and friends, be in contact with your family and friends. Don't lose contact. Then stick to a routine. Whatever you are doing, wherever you are, just stick to a routine, because it will help you to gain confidence and to relieve the boredom. If you are in a bed, you are not following your daily routine, the boredom will come and you'll start feeling depressive. So stick to the routine. You can have meditation and exercise on a daily basis to keep your physical health healthy. And of course, meditation, it will relieve anxiety and stress, and it will give you opportunity or a clear mind or clear idea to think. Next is get creative. You must have all cooked some of the other dishes during this lockdown, even though if you have not known how to cook, but then you all have tried by looking through the YouTube videos, and you have taken the guidance of your elder ones. So everyone during this lockdown, they have tried some or the other creative. Really good. That's how the people have spent months and months locking inside the house. So it's really positive way to be very creative, to keep your mental health good. Next is coping strategies. Since we are a healthcare workers, we all have read about the coping strategies and useful how to use coping strategies into a good manner. So don't forget about that. Don't think that those are the only things to be studied when we were students, and those are the things that has to be there in the books. In real life situation, we cannot use it. It is not true. When you practice good coping strategies in your life, you can come through the stress from your life. Next is stay connected and maintain your social networks. Social distancing, it is the thing that it is being introduced, that you have to maintain social distancing, but then with the help of technology revolution, you can stay connected, and it is really important to maintain your social networks. Next slide, there are some don'ts which I would like to say. Don'ts to take care of your mental health during this unlock and also the pandemic is that when referring to the people with COVID-19, do not attach the disease to any particular ethnicity or nationality. So hereafter, do not refer people as COVID-19 people whenever you are meeting any person or referring any nationality. Okay, never refer someone that they are from that nationality, so they are COVID-19. Okay, next is do not refer people with the disease as COVID-19 cases or the victims or the COVID-19 families. If in your neighbor, if someone have got positive, so don't refer that whole family as a this is a COVID-19 family, or in that lane or in that particular area there lives a COVID-19 family or a deceased person. You should always say that a person is suffering from COVID-19. Okay. Next is minimize watching, reading, or listening to the news about COVID-19 that cause you feel anxious and distress. So there are many fake news, and it's there in the news channels also, many news channels, that these are the fake news. Even people have started making fake sites also. So never trust on that, and don't panic for that information. Do not use negative coping mechanism or maladaptive behavior. When there was a lockdown, and now people have to face the consequences of lockdown, like they are losing their job, they are not able to earn their bread, or they are not able to live their livelihood in a manner they were living before. So do not go for a negative coping mechanism. Don't suppress your emotion, don't suppress your feelings, or don't go for maladaptive behavior like addiction, drinking, taking drugs, ending your life, suicide. So don't go for a maladaptive behavior. You're always cared by your family, so talk to them, talk to your friends, seek mental health care services with your neighbors, and those who know how to seek mental health services, kindly give awareness or provide awareness to others so that they can seek mental health. So this was it from my side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Mahima. That was indeed intensifying and beneficial too. We hope we have inculcated these discussions, which was interestingly based on the need of the hour. So we have end with the discussion. So we have a question answer round, which will be questioned by the participant. If you have any question regarding these topics, so you please put forward, Ma'am Sophie.
Yes, thank you, Kinti. So thank you very much to all the speakers. It was such an interesting and informative session. So right now questions are pouring in, so I will just directly go to the first one. So this question is for Miss Jenny. So if you can kindly answer which mode of delivery will be most preferable during this COVID-19 pandemic? Hello?
There are a few questions that I would like to answer. There are a few questions which has been put up. So the first one, the first question is asked on breastfeeding. Okay, I would like to address to the breastfeeding.
Okay,
Breast
sure,
milk is very important. So you can advise the mother to express the breast milk in a dedicated container and give it to the baby. Okay, rather than having a direct breastfeeding between the mother and baby, it is very easy to express the breast milk, because breast milk does not have the virus. You can express the breast milk and then give it to the baby. Someone else can feed. That is one thing, because breast milk doesn't have. Suppose if a mother is very wanted to feed the baby, she always have to follow the precautions: wear mask, wear gloves, take a bath. Okay, put a towel across and take the baby, feed the baby, and give it to the relative who is not positive or who is not having any symptoms. That is about breastfeeding. The second question is, how can perinatal transmission be reduced? From the mother to the baby, vertical transmission, we can't do anything through the placenta. During delivery, I guess there is no indication for an elective seizure here, because we know that HIV positive, if a mother is HIV positive, we can go in for elective C-sections, because during elective C-section, the contamination of the maternal and the fetal blood occurs. So to reduce that, we go for elective seizures. But unlike HIV positive, we have not got any evidences to go in for an elective Caesar for the COVID-19. Okay, so we don't have much research on suggesting an elective C-section for a patient with COVID-19. The third question which was raised is about the instrumental delivery. Instrumental delivery is not for COVID-19. It is to reduce maternal exhaustion if a patient has respiratory symptoms. Suppose if a patient who is COVID positive develops respiratory symptoms, that is, she is having increased breathlessness, during the second stage of labor, she might have maternal exhaustion. To cut short that, we want her not to undergo second stage of labor, might as well do an instrumental delivery and deliver the baby. That is the main reason for why we are applying an instrument, not because it will decrease the transmission of the virus. That is not the important thing here is we don't want the mother to undergo to have a maternal exhaustion. The next one is emergency LSE. Elective LSE is we do a COVID testing within a week's time we can do. But in an emergency LSEs, we don't do that because we always anticipate normal delivery. Mode of delivery, doing an emergency C-section is not an indication. So I would like to emphasize here that every mother has to be treated as COVID positive. They might be asymptomatic. So whatever precautions that we have to follow, the respiratory precautions that we have to follow, we have to do it even in labor room, even in theater, wherever we are posted. Precautions has to be followed whether they are positive or not positive, because if they are not, if we don't know the status, we have to consider them as suspects because most of them can be asymptomatic. So that is my answer about emergency C-section. The mode of delivery is not influenced by the presence of COVID in a patient. Mode of delivery, a normal delivery is always the best. If you're going for a C-section, that should be with an obstetric indication. COVID-19 is not an indication for performing an elective or an emergency Caesar. In case of conducting normal delivery or in case we are taking for a C-section, always it is better for us to consider any patient as COVID positive or a suspect patient. Thank you. Any other questions if you have, you can put forward.
Okay, ma'am. I think that's all. Thank you, ma'am, for your answers. Next question, this one person has asked, what measures can a teacher take to reduce the mental burden of the student, considering the fact that a poor network issues seminar preparation without books? I think this one, Ma'am Mahima, she can answer this question.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, so someone has asked about the network issue. So having internet connectivity problem, it's really challenging for teachers and for students and for the family. Nowadays, like online classes are very much into trend. Right from the mid of the lockdown, like when the lockdown has started in the month of March, everyone in the colleges also and in the school also, everyone has started taking online classes, even though they are completing their whole session online classes. So it's really challenging for the people, those who are not having a proper connection, they are not having smartphones, and it's a burden for their parents also to get their children with a good smartphones, with a proper connectivity and completing their education. So for them, the measure which I would like to suggest is, for them, we can have record the audio lectures for them. So we can communicate with those students with the help of audio, and we can have them education. We can give them education through this. But then also for teachers, it's really it's a real challenging thing to educate such people, those who are not in a proper connectivity area.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. One more question has popped up for Ma'am Jenny. So should a mother be separated from her, should an infected mother be separated from her newborn, ma'am? So is it necessary to keep the baby and mother separate?
This decision has to be taken case by case. As I told you earlier, in our hospital, we still follow separating the mother. If a mother is positive, we keep the mother separately, and the baby is considered as negative. So we keep the baby separately. Only after discharge, the mother can take the baby. Otherwise, the baby is kept separate, fed separate. If possible, we can get express breast milk from the mother and feed the baby, but otherwise the decision has to be taken case by case. If the mother is very insistent on having the baby nearby, then you can room in the mother and the baby, but make sure that there is a barrier between the mother's cot and the baby's cradle, and also there should be a 6 feet or more difference distance between the mother and the baby. While the mother is feeding the baby, she has to wear appropriate PPEs, that is face mask, hand hygiene, gloves, proper gown, wash her breast with soap and water because soap kills the virus. Then she has to feed the baby, take the baby and give it to the relative. So every time she feeds the baby, she has to follow she has to follow appropriate PPEs if she is choosing to feed the baby directly. If not, the ideal way is to separate the mother and the baby.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. I think there are no other questions. So,
Okay, then thank you to all the speakers and to Ms. Sophie. So we thank everyone once again for the precious discussion put forward, and it has achieved us to understand the overall session discussed. So we have come to the end of the session, and I would like to request Mrs. Arlene Beshra, the Assistant Professor of the OBG Department of AINE, to please deliver the vote of thanks.
I, family, would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Madam Blessy, Madam Jenny, and Madam Mahima. Took out your valuable time out of your busy schedule, and all the participants of different part of India. My special thanks to Madam Dr. Unmana Barmohai Sakya and Vice Principal Ma'am Dr. Ranjurani Das, and all the faculty members and non-faculty members of AINE family. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. So from my side, at the very onset, I would like to express my gratitude to our esteemed panel of speakers once again. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable time and efforts to impart of all of us with their knowledge, and we do hope to be a part of the lecture in the near future. Lastly, I am sure and certain that this webinar held today has not only imparted know-how, but also encourage all of us to be a part of another similar webinar to be held in the future. And I do hope that the level of participation will be more along with the never-ending support that has been governed by a respected principal and the OBG department and the fourth-year BSc nursing students. Thank you all once again, and let us all stay and fight this pandemic together. Thank you all.